September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and today we are actually going to talk about adolescent and young adult cancer survivors and the programs, that is provided for them. Adolescent and young adult cancer survivors face unique challenges and have specific needs. Today, we will discuss how adolescent and young adults can navigate the cancer care while simultaneously balancing mental health, financial well being, educational and career development goals, and social connection. Joining me this morning are my guests, Mital Brahmbhatt and Monalisa Chandra from Indian American Cancer Association Network, also known as IACAN. Mital Brahmbhatt is a member of the IACAN Board of Directors and currently heading the Adolescent and Young Adult Support Program. Mital has 18 years of healthcare experience. She is the Director of Health Management for Memorial Hermann's Population Health Service Organization and is an adjunct professor at Texas Women's University. My dear friend Monalisa Chandra has been a member of IACAN Board of Directors since 2018. She served as president from Jan 2021 to December 2022 and is currently engaged in the board as the past president. Mona Lisa has a PhD in behavioral science from the University of Texas School of Public Health. Her research includes breast and cervical cancer, HPV vaccination, cancer survivorship, and maternal mental health. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome my guests,
Hello.
Mital Brahmbhatt and Monalisa Chandra. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, so we talked about the weather, and the weather is perfect, so
Yep.
it's going to be a great hour.
Can't wait.
Can't wait, exactly. So let's begin with first a brief overview of IACAN since we have a lot of new listeners now, and let's begin with that.
So IACAN, Indian American Cancer Network, we are a support organization for South Asian community, serving primarily here in Greater Houston, but also nationally and as well as internationally to the Indian diaspora, as well as folks in India. Our main mission is to support and educate the community and support the families and folks who are going through the cancer journey. Aim is to, we ensure that nobody travels the cancer journey alone. It's a difficult journey to begin with, and then when you're a minority, we are a complex population, South Asians with different psychosocial barriers, along with the cancer process itself is not easy. So that's our job. We humbly try to give that support so that the journey is easier for the cancer patient or survivor as well as their families. And especially when you're in a foreign location, when do not have enough support system, then especially for the families and even the survivor himself or herself, it can be a daunting experience. So ICANN's job is to give them that support that's required, as well as raise community awareness, because that's again another area we are lacking. General understanding of cancer and breaking the barriers in sociocultural barriers in the community and making this discussion more normalized.
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, that is so true. Like, we still have so much to learn and really normalize it because, I know the word cancer itself is very daunting and scary, and there's so much fear, and we get overwhelmed by all of that.
Yeah.
So many times we kind of shut ourselves and try and deal with it without really, reaching out or getting proper resources and stuff. So now IACAN has started an adolescent and young adult cancer survivor support program, right? So can you shed some light on the program, Mital?
Sure. I think it helps to give a little bit of background on who I am and why this is so important to me.
Yeah.
I spent 9 of my 18 years in healthcare being a pediatric oncology social worker at Texas Children's. So I worked significant amount of time with patients and families, specifically, of South Asian descent. intimately trying to figure out how to navigate the system. And even at that time, which was like the 2005s, 2006s, we weren't really talking about pediatric cancer the way that we are talking about it now. But also, as we've also mentioned, the stigma, breaking down barriers. But specifically in our community, we are, the social worker hat on, putting that on, is we're an emotionally closed off community. Yeah. We don't like to talk about the hard things. And sometimes when it comes to talking about my child has been diagnosed, or my teenager or my young adult has been diagnosed with some sort of cancer, it's immediately, what's the community going to say? What are we going to do? And it's rather than ask for help, we tend to just retreat within ourselves. And so what I witnessed through my own experiences is one case in particular. I had a young girl with lymphoma. She was of South Asian descent, and she was terrified to have open conversations with her parents about, well, what's going to happen with my ability to have children in the future? I'm losing so much hair, but I'm afraid to ask to get my head shaved because what are people going to say about me and my family? And whatever religion within our culture and our community, it's always that level of there's this religiosity that comes into play, or some part of the culture that comes into play. So the importance of this program is to provide these young adults an outlet. Because from what I hear, they do deal with a lot of like, why me? I can't, will I ever get married? Because, culturally, it's this stigma. It's this little tick on my, like, biodata, so to speak. And parents are just scared to ask for help. And so a lot of it was me prodding families to say, it's okay. I'm here. Look, I'm just like you. I'm here to help you. And at the time, we didn't have I didn't know about this resource. We didn't have this resource. In particular with IACAN. So it would have been great at that point for me as a social worker to say, hey, I know some folks that are going to look like you and understand exactly what you're going through, on top of, the nuances of going through daily chemotherapy treatments or a bone marrow transplant. You can meet teenagers like you doing that, but you don't meet teenagers that look like you and can kind of talk about the home environment, can talk about how it felt to be alone in the hospital with just being completely isolated because you didn't want your family members to know. So this is why this program is so important, but also asking for help. Families need help with food and transportation and the basic necessities. But as I said earlier, we're an emotionally closed community, and I mean that with all due respect. But we could do better, and I think we want to do better, and we want to be that organization that opens that door up for our adolescent and young adults.
So, building on to Mital's, extensive expertise on this, working so closely, when working closely with the population gives you a whole different insight than what you read or what you get from on the surface. So, during my tenure as a president, we often used to receive calls from different parts of the country asking for, do you have any support system, any platform where my kid can go and talk? So that was very, even now it's giving me goosebumps because I was, that's okay. Sorry. That's all right.
That's all right.
Technology, as we were talking about it. I was surprised, and when I used to hear stories how they're struggling. So being an adolescent itself is not easy, right?
Exactly.
On top of that, being an adolescent in a minority family, it's even more difficult, especially with psychosocial barriers that we have in South Asian communities. On top of that, you're going through cancer. So it's a very difficult stage to begin with. On top of that, this experience, and this kids, one of the ways they were coping, where they would shut them off completely. So I got a call from a father from Seattle asking, like, do you have any support system where my son can just go and talk to other cancer survivors of his age group, and he's looking for something to relate to, and he hasn't talked to us. He's just keeping himself shut in the room and doesn't want to communicate with anybody. He needs a platform to communicate. So that's when that idea kind of came in. So it was an idea which came from the community need. And then I reached out to MD Anderson asking for, like, do you have anything specific for this group? Yes, we do, but minorities are barely represented there. So then we started brainstorming, how we can create a platform for these kids and get them going through the challenges. And having said that, it's just not a journey about the kid, it's also a journey of the parents. Because as parents, especially the immigrant parents, we have certain construct associated with the age and expected behavior. And so that's a challenge for the parent themselves. They're also learning. Me as a parent of a teenager, I'm also learning how to open up more, have a more diverse conversation. And then they don't know what's going on inside that person's body going through chemotherapy, because we don't talk about cancer. We don't share our experience even as adults, right? And forget about what's going on in that little brain. So that's why it is such an important challenge, because if parents don't open up, kids will not find that space. The safest space is at home. So it's going to be this program is not only going to focus on the children, of course, giving them the platform that they need, therapies, and whatever way we can support them mentally and physically, but also giving the parents a resource where they can educate themselves, or even ask somebody, this is what's going on with my child. How am I supposed to cope with it? Because this is a completely uncharted territory, right? I can't go and talk to my neighbors, because my neighbor will not discuss it with me, most likely. So that's where we are also trying to normalize this discussion. And it's very daunting for any parent to see her child going through that to begin with, and on top of that, feeling helpless. I have nothing to support the system. I myself I don't know how to understand my own child. It's such a helpless feeling.
Yeah.
So as a I mean so then we really started working on it, and gradually we got Mital on the team, who's got the whole expertise on this. And few things again from my research experience, since this is one of my area of research. Couple of things. When I used to take data, collect data, there were some outstanding statements which still has stayed with me. Is like, oh, my child was child who was a young adult was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her prospect of marriage has gone down significantly. Please don't discuss this with anybody. Or my son is now 15-year-old. In few years he will go to college. That might undermine his applications and all that. These kind of fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, there's such a
Totally
deep
unfounded.
seated, unfounded fear, which manifests in the behavior
Yeah.
and affects the child. Imagine the child going through that physically, and having seen that parents or the support network around doesn't have confidence how to handle this. So I think this is such a and in South Central United States, we don't have any support group like this to begin with. We have something scattered here and there in California, and some in Northeast and in New Jersey area with Sloan Kettering. They have a support group for South Asian children. So this was like shouting at us, we need something. So that's the whole objective of the program, to create that discussion, give them that sense of being, given them that platform that this is a journey, you will overcome. We will give you the support.
Yeah. So how has the response been so far?
We're just now kicking it off, so we're happy that, we're able to kick this whole program off on National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, so everybody go gold. So I'm pretty confident that, if we continue to get the message out and have opportunities like this and getting out into the community, I do believe that folks will start pouring in terms of their support. I think we just have to get outside of our comfort zones and be able to talk about these hard topics, right? And I think, Monalisa, you talked about, that one patient with breast cancer, and it really ties in nicely into the fact that as a community as well, we have to talk about preventative and wellness screenings.
Yes.
And it's just not adults, it's our kiddos that need it as well. They need their annual wellness visits. Our young women need to go in and get established with an OB-GYN and start getting those annual visits taken care of, and even young boys, no one wants to talk about the male cancers that happen to them in particular, but if that can be caught as well, and no one wants to believe that a 5-year-old can have, I don't know if I can say this on the radio, but that other, male type of cancer that occurs to them, happens to them, but those don't get caught if the parents aren't taking them to their annual wellness visits and doing what they need to do. And so, I feel very confident that as we get this off the ground and start showing the outcomes and how we get testimonials from our fighters and our survivors just to say, wow, this is something that we've been dying or we've been yearning for, we can meet that need. And so I'm ecstatic, I'm positive, I'm optimistic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have actually, with the inception of this program, we have had discussions with other community members. So the kind of support that we have in Houston right now, or as a matter of fact, in this part of the United States, is more treatment options.
Okay.
People are raising funds for helping them to get through treatment, which is again a major barrier, no doubt about that. But treatment is not the only part of the journey.
Right.
So that's why this kind of platform was necessary to, enhance the thing. And adding on to the preventative, oh my God,
That spotlight, right? Just neon lights and
oh my God. So that's I can't even tell you our uptakes starting from mammogram to pap test to HPV vaccination, which are again covered by insurance and highly doable. It's only if you first step, go to the doctor annually, make sure your kiddos, yourself, everybody have your checkups done and make sure all the preventative care is taken. As you mentioned, last Saturday we had a talk on HPV vaccination. South Asian community has significant low amount of HPV vaccination uptake. And there are religious, cultural barriers associated with it, as well as lack of awareness. People don't know there is a vaccine available which can prevent 6 kind of cancers to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's the starting age is 11 to 12 years. You can get started as early as 9. And that is kind of gives you a security that when your child is growing up will be protected from 6 kinds of cancer.
Correct.
So this awareness doesn't exist. And a lot of people think it's only for the girls. No, it's for the girls and boys.
Right.
Oropharyngeal cancer is right now in the United States the highest site of cancer among males in the HPV cancer related stuff. So these awareness and communication and discourse is very important as much as possible. And I always consider whoever is part of supporting IACAN is IACAN family. Our mission is your mission. So Lynn has been extremely supportive over the years to put out this mission and support in many other ways. So next time you see somebody, a mother of a teenager, ask them, did you get your HPV vaccination? You see
It's the HPV vaccination, right?
Correct.
Yes.
1 and 2, I believe. They have a HPV 2 as well?
No, there's nothing called HPV 2.
Or it's just HPV?
HPV vaccine.
HPV.
Just, yeah.
No, my 13-year-old got one this.
Yeah, so there are 2 doses, if that's what.
doses,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
doses,
So if you're within the 11 to 12,
Yeah, so if you
max
had
to
the
15,
first
you have 2 doses. Once you
job.
cross your 15th birthday, you get 3 doses.
Oh, okay.
And you can start as early as 9 now. CDC has recommended that So these information needs to go out, and it's onus on everybody to
Yes.
educate folks.
Well, and I also think that we're all pretty active on social media, and so I think in general we always post the great things and the good things and the Instagram worthy type of stories, but why not share the story about you getting your son vaccinated on your social media platform, because then that destigmatizes it, right? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, I wouldn't have thought that she would have been this
Very
liberal, within air quotes, and it may start generating their own self-awareness and thought. So we have to do better. Social media is not there just to have fun. It could be used as a really positive platform to impact change and impact the conversations that we're having within our own homes, but at dinner parties or get-togethers or whatever it might be. It's not about the latest Gucci bag that you have. It could be, it's a fun conversation, but also just having hard conversations amongst your closest of family members, your extended family members, your friends. So I really encourage that. We didn't have these forums before, so why not use it for the positive good and not for the, bringing people down type of thing, and our kids use it. And so if they're seeing positive messaging on there about, did you know there's this organization out there, or did you know it's okay that you lose your hair during chemotherapy treatment, it tends to grow back thicker and maybe even a different color sometimes. Or did you know that your taste buds will change, and it's okay if you don't want to eat what mom is cooking, if you don't want the roti and rice, then and you want Chick-fil-A, then maybe that's what mom should get you, because your taste buds, everything is changing. And so we have to be very open-minded to our adolescents and young adults about where they're at in that journey, and not where me as the adult is like all about me type of thing. It's about that child at that moment, and we've got to process through that together. And I think this program is going to help tremendously to kind of say everything's valid, everyone's valid. However, let's talk about what your son's going through or what your daughter's going through, and then how do we help you both get to some sort of middle ground, so we're not preventing keeping you from being compliant with treatment, or what's the word, doing something that may impact the treatment, right? Like some holistic things or that sort of thing. I think Monalisa and I have talked about that as well. As a culture and as a community, we like our holistic part of medicine, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking it at all, but yet especially with this group, you have to be open with the care team to say, this is what I'm doing. Is this okay? Versus just, which I've experienced, where families will just keep it closed and not tell the doctors. And I'm like, well, I just saw this in the hospital room, and that doesn't seem like it's part of the treatment regimen. So we're going to have to talk about it. So always just encouraging the open dialogue, which can be extremely difficult from my experience.
Yeah, asking the questions. Because many times we don't ask the questions, right? There's so much of hesitation.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just, there are events, or there is a lot of information that we do get from people, right? But then it's always, we are just listening to it, but are we asking those questions? Like, if you have even the tiniest minute question, ask it. It's not making you look silly, but it's more like you are having that, it's clearing your mind, and it's helping others at the same time. So that is, it's important. And there are so many misconceptions about like the vaccination itself, and then and especially when it comes to drugs, there's always the side effects, and everyone is so hesitant because of that. It's always like, down the road, what will happen? I don't know.
Right. and we've got the greatest medical center in the world, right? And so you go to MD Anderson, you go to Texas Children's with your child. These are docs that know exactly what they're talking about. They're not going to lead you astray. And you know what, I used to tell families all the time, whether they were South Asian or not, you've been so used to being in the driver's seat. Like, you made the decisions on when to turn, how fast to drive, what music to listen to. And now all of a sudden, to kind of going to where you were going, you're now in the passenger seat. And you got a whole group of people driving you. But you can be a backseat driver if you want. But just, you got to ask the questions. Not be negative, but also just say, hey, I'm really used to this area. I think you should turn right here. Versus just sitting back, being complacent, and not asking the questions, because it's hard, right? I'm not a parent yet, but I've been around enough parents and children to know that's the sense of losing control. And once you lose a sense of control, when Lisa kind of alluded to it earlier, it comes out in your behaviors with your children, of like, well, I don't know what to do today. We got to go to chemotherapy treatment today, and I've got to work. I got to pay bills. We've got to go to Monday. We've got to go do this, and it's like the child's feeling guilty at that point, because it's like, now become a burden.
That's a very valid point. The guilt that child goes through.
Yeah.
Because they want their family to be happy. It's happy, nice place that it used to be before the journey began.
Yeah.
So they kind of feel, and this we have it's also seen in case of domestic violence between the parents.
Right.
It's a very typical behavior. The child takes it all to themselves, thinking that I am responsible for this mess.
Right.
So their helplessness should not mess it up altogether.
Yeah, we need to get out of our bubble. Like I said many times, for a lot of things. So, but so just tell me, what age defines the AYA group?
It's a pretty broad spectrum. I think it's like 13 to
15 to 39
15 to
officially.
39. Yeah.
Okay.
But adolescence starts way before that. So the
Okay.
15 to 39, because the incidences are highest during that phase, you don't
Okay.
really see much cases before 15.
Okay.
But adolescence obviously starts from before, and we see child cancers such as leukemia, blood cancers, and similar groups, which actually can happen as early as 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. So when we say AYA, officially it's 15 to 13 year, but actually it's way earlier than that.
Yeah. But I think for this program, I think we're really focusing on that normal, like, adolescent window, right? Like 13 to 21, 22, because it's usually based on protocols as well.
Okay.
They do better with pediatric protocols than they do with adult, like
Correct.
older adult protocols. And so, like, there's childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia, you've got the different types of lymphomas that usually are in adults, like our ages, that when they show up in children, it's pretty concerning. So there's a fine balance to knowing, like, which age range to help. However, knowing the nuances of adolescence, you're going through puberty. You're supposed to be going through puberty.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be going out and having fun and doing all these things more autonomously. And now all of a sudden, that's not happening. So it's a whole different ballgame than a 10-year-old who's really much more reliant on their mom and dad or other caretakers than a young adult where it's like, I'm pretty independent. I can drive myself. I can do this. And all of a sudden, I can't. I can't do anything for myself.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on short break, and when we return, we will continue our conversation with Mital and Monalisa Chandra from IACAN. This is Chai Time on 99.5 FM. Welcome back to Chai Time on 99.5 FM. If you just tuned in, we are in conversation with Monalisa Chandra and Mital Brahmbhatt from IACAN. And we have been talking about adolescent and young adult cancer and the program, the support program that IACAN, has started. So let's continue with that. So yeah, initially, before we went on break, we talked about the age, right? And so how prevalent is cancer in this age group? And are cancer rates increasing in this age group as well?
I'm going to turn to my scientist here.
So that's a very valid question, Lynn, and I feel a little sad every time when I have to respond to this. We don't have pretty much no data on South Asian community. The nationwide AYA survivorship is AYA diagnosis is 8.4%, which as a percentage looks low, but if you convert it in numbers, it's quite a high amount. And the survivorship for 5-year survivorship for AYA survivors is around 85.3%. So that's a good sign, but we don't have any segregated data for South Asians. Whatever we have on Asians is very like something thrown into it, doesn't even because extremely underreported. And we have been, as population scientists, we have been shouting at all possible platforms that at least, because just clubbing up whole Asian doesn't justify different kind of complexities that Asian category comes with the sub-ethnic groups. And same problem with the Hispanic community too. Being a Mexican is different from being a Brazilian, or so we just club it up all as Hispanics. So so the epidemiological data on that is 8.4% for overall AYA cancer survivorship. So for South Asians, we don't have any data. No national level data, no state level data. That's one of the things IACAN is also pushing. Our scholarship program that we have started lately is to encourage more South Asian cancer health research. So these kind of discussions needs to start. People needs to start working on it. So we are trying to give them some incentive to folks, to the scientists, the young students. You take up the subject and find out the scientific portion of it, the science behind it, what's going on in the community. We don't have any representation. So but based on the anecdotal data and different organizations working all across United States, the even though it is not super alarming, but with every generation, just like the process of acculturation, the number of incidences are increasing.
Okay.
And another thing that ICAN have been trying to emphasize is the whole cancer discussion in the South Asian group is primarily on the immigrant community, folks like us who have moved from India. But their needs as a survivor are different than the needs of the children who were born and raised here. So they are kind of the sandwich generation, a portion of it, their Indian heritage, a portion of their American heritage, and they have their own identity. So that identity is generally not very well broadly accepted in the mainstream population of South Asians, right? So that's a struggle. So so through this program, we will also highlight their needs as a first generation immigrant population. And that makes it even more complex when they're cancer survivors.
Wow. That's, I mean, I just can't imagine, like how, I think it's so many times, like we have so many nonprofits that come, and it's mostly, we're always trying to emphasize on our community, like, specifically on the South Asian community, like how important it is to gain knowledge, to, get involved, because we really need to break that. We need to move forward. And I know a lot of y'all, I mean, y'all do work just right there. Y'all are doing all the first-hand work. So that is making that difference. But sometimes when, even when I go to events and when I see and listen to people and the crowd around, sometimes I feel like pushing them. I feel like doing
Same way. I mean, because I think it's provocative to push our community to think outside of the comfort zone, but just the bells and whistles, the fancy things, the things that make us always the feel goods, right? Unfortunately, this is not a feel good. This is something that makes us pause and think. And we need to do that better as a community, not just with the AYA work that we're doing, but in other areas as well, just in general. I go to events as well, and I also look at, where are the other opportunities to teach and educate on topics that are uncomfortable. And I rarely see that. And so we can be that organization that kind of propels that forward, just to say it's okay to feel uncomfortable, but we need to have this conversation so that when you go home, you know how to have a conversation with your partner or with your kids or with your grandparents or whomever, just to say, this isn't Monalisa's fault, okay? This isn't something I did in my previous life to cause this to happen or something of that nature. Because I would hear that from moms constantly. Huge. Of like, did I do something? Did I do something to have my child have cancer? I'm like, no, this isn't you, this isn't her, this isn't dad. This is just, unfortunately, the way that this is kind of like the cookie crumbles, so to speak. But we're here to try to pick up those pieces and figure out how to help you get this to the end of this journey, however that may look. And a part of this as well, especially with our adolescent and young adults, is talking about grief and talking about the concept of, I'm not going to survive this. And there have been cases that I've worked on within, our South Asian community that didn't result in a child surviving. And it's working through that with a mom and a dad from a religious component, just to say, okay, from a faith component, how can I help you? Who do you need? How can I bring them into the hospital? That was my job, is to figure that out for them. But there's also that, I cannot believe that this didn't work. I cannot believe that there was no one on the bone marrow registry for my son. And so instead of it being a 90% match, we're down to a 50% match. So there's, we've got to be okay with bringing this up to the limelight and having people in our community to say, how can I do better? What can I do to help moving forward? And maybe it's just a different generation. Maybe it's our generation that makes that change. And then it's our kids that are going to make that change. So, but we have the opportunity to change a lot of people's perspectives and support. And it just isn't, I'm going to write a check. Like, checks are great.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. However, it's also volunteerism and saying, okay, if we're going to have programs and events for our kids, show up and help us. Because it's not going to be me, Monalisa, and the rest of the board, the advisory board, and y'all to help us. Because these events take a village, especially with the kids. And
Absolutely.
Monalisa and I have talked about wanting therapeutic-based events and programs for them, as well as fun ones.
Yeah.
But really being able to, build a base for them, and then also build a volunteer base to say, let's do a one-to-one. Let's talk here. I'm going to college, or I've been to college. Let me help you write, write applications or submit scholarships. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've had to do that. So, it's just like being able to parse out exactly, what we need to do to help them during each phase of their journey.
And then just casual conversation
Yeah.
between survivors, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm having hair loss. How did you manage? I wore this fancy scarf. It kind of covered it. Or I did something,
Yeah.
Things that me as a mother probably will not be able to convince my teenager
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
There'll be easy conversation between two survivors and
Yes.
a more affirming sense. And the one more thing which I would like to also highlight is understanding that adolescent and young adult cancer survivors are also very likely to have chronic diseases. Which is why it is super duper important to have them have the well child exam every year. They are more susceptible to arthritis, pulmonary diseases, diabetes is in any ways high in our community. So that's why it is just not, we have seen that before. Treatment's over, hospital said that you're remissioned,
Yeah.
all follow-ups were stopped after that.
Yeah.
So my child is fine, I don't want to bother with it. So preventative care is super duper important. And in the process of the preventative care, I tell you, this has been even true for the adult survivors. The caregivers give up their preventative care.
Yeah. Yeah, they stop
So
taking care of
mothers
themselves.
are exhausted emotionally, physically, to even forget about doing their well checks and all that. So it's again, as a behavioral scientist, I strongly believe in the socio-ecological model, which says that an individual's health behavior is a manifestation of different layers around them, starting from state policies to community behavior to the family interaction. The whole resultant process gives whatever that individual is doing. So if I'm smoking,
Yeah.
it's not just because I love to smoke. Yeah, that is a component of it, but there are other factors which are enabling that smoking behavior.
Yeah.
And with that said, I would also, tying this back to the AYA, because these are the interventions that they need to be aware of if, adolescence is the time when they explore new behaviors.
Yeah.
So smoking being one of them. Smoking increases cancer chances for secondary cancers or reoccurrence of the primary cancer. So once your remission doesn't mean it will never come back again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these kind of preventative behaviors, awareness is very important, right? So
Yeah.
that we can do through our group sessions and educating the parents and all that.
And I think it's great that you brought that up, Monalisa, because there is a high prevalence of these kids coming back with a second type of cancer. It may not be the same cancer, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road, he may have had leukemia at 15, but then at 35, he shows up with something like a brain tumor.
Right.
So there's a higher prevalence of secondary cancers that can happen. And then also to your point is embarking on dangerous behaviors, while they're going through treatment, right? So if their home environment is, very dramatic and there's not a lot of structure or whatever, they're going to participate in that as well. Or they're going to try to find a way to be normal, which is doing the things that they probably weren't taught to do, which is either, I'm going to find a pack of cigarettes, I'm going to go drink, I'm going to go partake in other types of drugs. And so that happens a lot in our AYA population because they're dealing with their mental health. And they're struggling with their own questions and their own demons and their own questions. And so as a community, we don't, like I said earlier, we don't talk about it. And so how do they cope? They cope the wrong way. And then we as a care team find out after the fact or while they're in the inpatient side completely distraught. And you're like, what's going on? What happened? And it's, I don't know how to talk about this. I overdosed on this or whatever it might be because I just don't have anyone to talk to. And so our job is to help them talk. And I've been passionate about this since I was a kid and helping others. I think my mom and dad are listening, so they know that I've always wanted to help. And part of my dream was to be able to help or create a nonprofit that can help our adolescent and young adults just with everything in life. And so this is like a nice dream come true to be able to take what I've learned as a first generation immigrant, moving here with my family and what I went through. Did not go through cancer, but just understanding that plight, but then working with families in my professional life around what they've experienced and what their children experience, and then how can Monalisa and his organization just try to at least make some incremental shift in the right direction.
Yeah. And I'm so glad we are highlighting this because, like even Monalisa, when you called and we talked, it didn't even dawn on me about AYA, right? Usually it's younger kids and then it's, it's females or it's, males or females, right? But it's adults.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned that and then when, I went and I kind of just read about things, articles and all that, there's so much information and it's like, wow, I didn't even realize. For me, it was adolescent is not even, it didn't even occur to me at all.
Yeah.
Seriously, like for me, and I'm like, wow, this can happen to anyone. And for them in that age group, it's so sensitive and they're already going through so many changes, bodily changes, mental changes and things like that. And then for something like cancer, it just changes everything even more so. So.
And the age group is the one we are really focusing on is like, 13 through 21, 25 is the time when your career develops.
Yes.
So remember, you're going through treatment, you're missing classes, you're falling back on assignments.
Right.
And belonging to this model minority community that we are, we have to outperform everybody all the time.
Yeah.
It is the reality. That's the expectation of all the parents.
It's true.
What level of stress? When I see my son stressing out because he missed a test because he had a viral fever, I am the person like, chill. It's okay. You're not going to die. So, but I cannot even fathom for months a little kid is going through chemotherapy and it's after side effects when the brain is foggy, can't remember half the things. Now you have to write a essay. I mean, it's not easy.
Well, and then you also bring up the late effects, right? So it may not be immediate for our kids, but it's the after effects. 5-10 years down the road, they're trying to figure out like, why am I not able to like think clearly? Why do I get diagnosed with ADHD all of a sudden?
Absolutely.
Or things of that sort? And so we need to talk about, it's not I'm going to be done in 6 months or I'm going to be done in a year. It's the rest of their life is being impacted by this diagnosis. And we have to not have it be the elephant in the room for the rest of their life. Because how uncomfortable is that? Even when you're trying to be a parent, right? You're a cancer survivor and you want to be a parent in the future.
Fertility is a huge issue.
Fertility is a huge issue. We don't talk about how a young woman needs to think about preserving her eggs. We don't talk about young men needing to think about their sperm, but because we don't talk about it. The other communities do, because trust me, I've had some funny stories about other, Caucasian families being like, hey, my son needs to do this, and it's at the bedside. And I'm like, you want what? I got to go get a urology consult and figure this all out. They were so open to it.
That's beautiful. That's
Right.
so beautiful.
So beautiful. And then you can go down the hall, and it's
Totally different.
It's like, no, we don't talk about that. And I'm like, but we have to. They'll want to talk about it outside of the room. They won't want to talk about it in front of their teenager. And so, we have to start thinking about how this looks all throughout the rest of their life. And if we don't do it at that moment, they're not going to be able to be parents. And then how detrimental is it to them in the future where they're like, well, Mom, I didn't know I had this option. Why wasn't I asked my wishes? And that's the other thing too with our AYA. They should be asked. They have an opinion. And they're pretty intelligent. They're pretty wise individuals when they're going through this, to ask them their thoughts and their feelings. It may not be what you want to hear as a parent. However, I've done my part to say, I'm hearing you. However, we got to meet in the middle here. You can't just stop treatment, or you can't just say, I want to go to prom and I'm going to come back to the hospital and finish. That's not how that goes. But, there's middle of the road type of conversations that we have to facilitate. And sometimes it's just pushing the conversation and making them feel uncomfortable, which is what I hate to say.
Yeah.
But I've had some really uncomfortable conversations with parents about, like, I don't recommend you not doing that, or I don't recommend you going at it from that angle with your child. It's this, let them share. If you've got concerns, if you want to start crying, it's okay. Cry together. Show emotion. Also, cry together. Be
That's
angry
what they
together.
Don't do.
Exactly.
It's emotions too.
We don't show it. We want to show I got a 1600 on my SAT, or I'm going to Harvard, or all these kinds of things, but we don't show the sadness and the fear that sometimes our kids need to see us as adults. They need to see that and be like, it's an okay emotion. I can be scared. I can be frustrated, as long as I communicate it out in a healthy way. But if my parents aren't doing it, and they're only celebrating the good things, then this obviously is such a bad thing that I can't cry about it. I can't be angry about it. I'm just gonna retreat. And it changes them completely from day one of treatment to the end of treatment. I have seen young people completely change their personality because of what's going on in their home environment. And we can only do so much as their care team.
Right. And I want to harp on the thought which Mital said. It's a very, very, very important point. I mean, it's irrespective of whether you're cancer survivors or not. But parents being able to show emotion, parents being able to show that they have failed, embracing the failure with the pride. It doesn't. So as a migrant community, for us, we have always got to show that we are successful, right? And it's a reality.
Of course, yes.
In this community, in this country, to survive, you have to go above average, which is completely a understandable knowledge. But having said that, there are moments in life. Life happens. Things happens, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Bleep.
So it's okay to fail. It is okay that I didn't do well in this SAT, and I can brush up and redo something else in my life more successfully. Embracing anxiety.
Yep.
You can't show you're anxious. You can't cry to your parents and say that, I'm not being able to do it because my brain is foggy. Or I feel my body's changing, but at the same time I'm messed up with the treatments right now. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So it is very important to embrace that negative experience and give it a pathway, because every emotion that you try to suppress is going to have a chemical manifestation in the brain.
True. Yeah.
So
She ties it back to science. I love it. Always a tie back.
as a training,
I know, I see that. I'm like, I'm impressed. So I'm like, okay.
So it's important to have those emotions have a vent.
Yeah.
Either through your peer group discussion or through parental discussion. And also, as I mean, again, going back to science and psychological theory, even the community needs to learn how to embrace.
Yes.
Don't show sympathy, show empathy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sympathy doesn't help. Empathy actually helps people to rise up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to ask, can I help you? What?
Right.
No.
Right.
And you, as a parent or a survivor, don't hesitate to ask that I need this help.
Yeah.
Because as a humankind, we are together. We are not
Yeah.
loners. We can't function alone. So embracing this idea and normalizing the cancer journey. Yes, cancer is a disease which we haven't yet solved the whole puzzle yet. We don't have a vaccination that fixes all the cancer in the world, or we don't have one specific medicine which will 100% tell you everything will be fine.
Right.
But we have gone a long way than like even 50 years back.
Yeah.
Mortality rates have gone down, survivorship has gone up. There are beautiful preventative measures that we have. So it is important that we embrace this discussion, and with cancer and along with that mental health, because my child is going through a lot of things, can't manifest that.
Yes.
I have to tune up with that individual and figure it out, but if I am hesitant towards accepting that he's going through depression, I was told like when I heard one of the cases where the child is not willing to talk. Absolutely shuts himself in the room, doesn't go out anywhere, doesn't socialize. The father was like, I don't know what to do. So did you have a therapy with somebody? The first reaction, no, he's fine. Mentally, he's perfectly fine. So, these are real data that we have from our experiences in IACAN dealing with the population. And you can blame the father or you can blame the child because that's a conditioning that we all have grown up with.
Correct.
But whatever the conditioning was there are always opportunity to educate and move forward.
Yeah.
We can break
Change
that
it.
cycle.
We can break that.
Exactly.
Break the generational trauma. Break the norms that the community has enforced upon us. I mean, I know my parents, put everything on the line to come here and give my sister and I the best life, but they've been very open to just learning and understanding about everything. And we have dialogue. That's the beauty about, my relationship is we talk about everything practically, even if it's uncomfortable, but it's a good dialogue. And so I try to say, doesn't have to be fluff all the time.
Yeah.
And we have to break the generational trauma. We have to break those negative traditions and those negative expectations because it doesn't do anyone any good.
Right.
And I'm just excited and looking forward to being able to help our community change. What did Gandhiji say? Be the change. Yeah. We've got to be the change, and it's got to start now. And childhood cancer, there's not enough money that goes into research. We've come a long way with the adult cancers, but the childhood cancers are still one of those, like, we scratch our head and we're like, what? How did this manifest in a child? Like, how did that work? But we don't have enough interest in funding in this space. And so if we can just continue to work with organizations like the Ferris Foundation and the multiple other organizations like Candlelighters, Heroes for Children, the American Cancer Society, there's so many in this wonderful city that if we just plug into them, we can build a network and be that group for the largest, like, I think, minority group in the city, I feel like, right now.
We are.
So,
Second largest after Vietnamese population.
See, I knew she would know that. I did that intentionally.
So it takes a very special skill to handle this population.
Yeah, and she has that passion. You have to have that passion to start something like this, to think about the young adults as well. So before we wrap up, any events coming up for IACAN you'd like to
Yes.
talk
So
about?
Specifically this program, Mital, I want you to say about it.
Okay.
Kick off.
So we are very excited on Sunday, September 24th at Eiling's from 4 to 6 p.m. We are kicking off our Go Gold AYA event, and so feel free to come. It's making sure that I have the ticket prices. $15, and that will include a raffle. But really, it's just
raffle and a drink
and raffle and a drink, and Eileen's is
sponsored by
100% generously donated and sponsored by Eileen's, and so this is just an opportunity for all of you to come out, learn more about what we're trying to build, and just meet and greet with us. We want to get to know you. You guys are our family out here in the community, and so let's meet, let's talk, and this will really help us kickstart off the programs and developing events that will be upcoming. So really we'll be excited to share some of the new programs that we're going to be rolling out. So please feel free, come out 2 hours of your time out in Sugarland. I think you'll enjoy it, and thank you again to Eileen's for all of your support.
And in addition to that, we are right now having a open application for South Asian Cancer Health Research Scholarship, which again, as I mentioned, we have very less data, very less research on this topic, especially on this AYA population. So anybody interested in any South Asian cancer health research, please go to our website, www.iacannetwork.org. You can go ahead and submit your applications, and all the instructions are there, and application closes on 1st of October. So yes, that's going on right now with IACAN.
Thank you so much, ladies,
Thank
for coming.
you.
It was a fun hour.
think
I
so.
learned a lot, but I also had fun. So I
Same.
love this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you,
Yes,
Olivia,
thank
for
you.
supporting IACAN's causes and our mission for years.
Yes,
It does need a village
Yeah,
to make a
Definitely,
difference.
I
So
totally agree on that. Yes, and we shall see everyone here on the 24th at our links. Come and have conversations with us, have
Yeah.
drinks with us.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
It's going to be a fun event. Signing off. This is Chai Time on 99.5 FM.